2 good hair days in a row. What's going on? Is it yak spunk? Only my hairdresser knows for sure. And there I go, deflecting with humour, I guess. I am disillusioned with a lot of things. Some things in particular, but a lot of things. Maybe I'm not quite in my right mind at the moment. I have been working flat out for weeks without really feeling like I'm accomplishing much, trying to stave off a depressive episode, which I can feel kind of coming on, you know, hoping to be able to keep going until that goes away or something, but I don't think it's going to. You know, there's stuff going on which is probably affecting my mood, so I don't know, take whatever I'm saying with a pinch of salt, if you like. But I am disillusioned with a lot of things, and this has been going on for some time. I have really kind of impossible standards for myself, at least according to the psychiatrists and therapists that I've talked to. And while I'm a lot more forgiving with others, I do have certain levels of expectation from others. And when they fail to meet them, especially when I call them friend or have gone out of my way to stand up for them or the things that they believe in or whatever, yeah, it does really impact me. In gaming, I feel like people don't have the same kind of principles that I thought they had. And I felt like this for some time, you know, this is nothing new. I would have thought that in gaming, both kinds, digital and analog, having been attacked so much for so long, there would be a really strong culture of free expression and so on in gaming. I got a rude awakening on that score 2014, maybe even a bit before, right? And it turned out that people didn't, or that they prioritized other things, or that they were scared and wouldn't make a stand for one reason or another on various things. That was tremendously disillusioning. Yeah, I thought I understood the gaming community. I thought these were kindred spirits. I thought creators were kindred spirits who, even if they didn't like something, even if they didn't agree with something, would stand up for other people's right to make whatever. That didn't turn out to be that way. I was diagnosed with the depression and later the anxiety and a few other issues around 2007, so it's been 12 years now. And while I was struggling with that, I found it very difficult to find decent support. The NHS, for as much as I love it, has a one-size-kind-of-fits-all attitude towards mental health care, which simply isn't true, right? There's lots of ways in which your brain can go wrong, and it's such a complex organ, and people's histories and backgrounds and so on are so complex. It's like sending everyone who's physically ill in any way to an oncologist. You know, their speciality is cancer. They're not really as good with a broken leg or whatever else. So when you put everyone into cognitive behavior therapy and put everyone on SSRIs or whatever, you don't necessarily get the kind of tailored care that mental health care needs. Now, I understand the problem, but one of the other issues I kind of ran into, particularly in the years following my diagnosis, was that so much of it is just not set up for men. The kinds of therapy that you can access is not male-centered unless you go private, which I was fortunate to be able to do for about 18 months. And that, I think, combined with the performative wokeness in the gaming community and other creative communities, writing and so on, that I intersect with, that's what kind of got me interested in men's rights, right? Now, I've never called myself a men's rights activist or a men's human rights activist or whatever. I say that I am interested in men's issues and that I believe, at least in modern Western societies like Canada, US, UK, Australia, Ireland, and so on, maybe not so much Ireland, but the pendulum has swung the other way. There are tremendous issues that men face that are going unaddressed, that I think need to be addressed if we are to emerge to a status of equality and fairness between the sexes. So, and I found in my investigations and so on that the men's rights movement did offer a lot of support for guys like me, and that its reputation at the time was largely undeserved. This idea that they're all sexist, misogynist, horrible people or whatever, it simply wasn't true. At the same time I was getting disillusioned with feminism. I would have called myself a feminist up until around 2010, 2012, right? Because I believe in equality between the sexes. I believe in, equality before the law, fair pay, all of those things, right? So that you would think, naturally place me in the ranks of feminism. But I was finding that feminist activists were being particularly obnoxious and horrible, and that they were not really looking for equality anymore. They were looking for some form of superiority, to be treated as special, as better, to treat men as lesser, as damaged women, and so on, to blame men for everything. And most importantly, to blame men today for the state of society and so on in the past. So I got disillusioned with feminism, and I found in the, I guess you'd call it the manosphere, but that's also pejorative. But there I found support, I found ideas, I found awareness of alternative approaches to men's mental health and so on. I found Warren Farrell, who probably of all the people in the men's rights movement is slagged off the most for no real reason. It's such a taboo to help men, or as a man to show weakness and so on, and so it was great to find somewhere that I could be myself, I could open up about my issues, I could find resources and help and so on. So people who say that the men's rights movement doesn't do anything, they're wrong. But I was never comfortable with calling myself a men's rights activist, because it did have all these negative connotations. Some of that was cowardice on my part because of those negative connotations, and yeah, I hate myself for that. I try to be principled rather than tribalistic. I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that nobody's perfect, everyone fails, and it's the attempt that matters. But still, I prefer to describe myself as an egalitarian, with a current fixation on men's issues, because I felt that that's where the problem was, particularly through personal experience, mental health care, and that the increasing pressures on men to be a certain way in society. I guess you could sum it up that feminism has allowed a woman to be pretty much whatever she wants, and to access a great deal of support to pursue whatever she wants, even traditionally male pursuits. Now, I, as someone artistic, with pretensions to be an intellectual, not someone physical, I never really fit the kind of macho male mold, beard notwithstanding, right? And so it was difficult growing up, not being conventionally masculine, not being interested in sports and so on. And all the time I was seeing girls be encouraged to be whatever they wanted, but there was no real intercession on the part of men to say that you can be artistic, that's a good goal, that's a wonderful thing, you can be intellectual, you are allowed to not be interested in sport, whatever. If it hadn't been for my very supportive parents and grandparents, either directly seeking to encourage me in the things that I was interested in, or indirectly by example showing me how to live, yeah, things would have been a lot darker and nastier for me. Yeah, it was bad enough. It got to the point where I began to doubt my own sexuality to an extent, despite being regrettably heterosexual, I was wondering, is there something wrong with me? Am I giving off homosexual vibes or whatever to people? I mean, you can tell me. The only traditionally male trait that was available to me was stoicism. You put up with things. You deal with it. You don't make a fuss. You square your shoulders and you carry on, right? And so I overindulged in that, and that's what got me where I was with the mental break leading to the depression and so on, because you're not meant to just take everything. You're not meant to just put up with everything. But because that was the only really traditional male trait that I could indulge in, I took it to an excess. That is what toxic masculinity is. It's when you take a male trait and you do it to excess, whether it be competition or aggressiveness, or sexual promiscuity, or this, stoicism. It's not toxic in and of itself. A degree of stoicism is good. A degree of sexual aggression even can be good. But it's when you take it to excess that it becomes a problem. When you take the weight of the world on your shoulders and you don't look for help and you don't talk to anyone, that's the problem. But the men's rights movement, even though I didn't count myself about its number, they were sympathetic. They were helpful. So if anyone tells you, like I said, if that they don't do anything, they're just bullshitting. It does help people like me. And then there was Gamergate and everything, and at the same time that I was getting profoundly disappointed in the communities that I was a part of, the creator communities and so on, at the same time I was getting buoyed up by the fact that there was this enormous movement of people who did care and were willing to be principled and were willing to make a stand. But then that brings us to today, right? It's years, 5 years since Gamergate started, a whole bunch of articles slagging it off, saying all the wrong things about it, the same propaganda. But what is left, the kind of rump of the movement that carried on, are awful people, or have turned into awful people over time. That's disillusioning, as much as the people who disappointed me in the first place. All right. I think it's an aspect of activism that it's wankers who stay committed to the cause. I think it's just a thing. You see it in feminism. It's rife with obnoxious, horrible people. You see it with trans activism. The people who are really activated about being activists are often the worst people, the least good ambassadors, the people that are in it to cause trouble for others. So the arsehole spiral settles in, I think. You have a movement, you want people to support it, and so you let a lot of things slide. And unfortunately, I'm seeing that in the men's rights movement that I had found so welcoming and helpful in the past. In part because it has built up speed and garnered more support, and in part because its image is so fucking terrible and always has been, undeservedly in the past, but still, it seems to be attracting horrible people. And that's disillusioning. Right, I still have a lot of time for a lot of the people who are leaders in that, even though I don't call myself one of them. The Honey Badger Brigade in particular, Alison Tiemann is my spirit animal when it comes to creativity. I feel her pain keenly and empathise with it a great deal. And Brian's awesome, and Anna Cherry, who's kind of associated with them, love her to bits. These are all great people, and it's their attitudes and their beliefs and their support that really help me a great deal. But every time they make a post on Facebook, or anytime there's a tweet chain or anything increasingly related to these issues, you see people who fit the stereotype that was around when they helped me, but that wasn't true in the past. The misogynist, the traditionalist, the kind of people that talk about degenerates and so on, or bang on about trans people or sex workers in a negative way. And that's not what I wanted, not what helped me about the men's movement in whatever form it took. What helped me, what I want to see from the men's movement is not a shoring up of traditionalism or slagging people off for being men the wrong way or being women the wrong way or whatever else. I want men to have the same broad opportunity to be whatever kind of man that they are that women have had. I want equality. And the only reason that I am engaged with men's issues is that I'm a man and that I no longer think men are being treated as equals, legally, socially, in many other ways. And a lot of the blame for this I place on modern feminism, modern woke activism and so on, and its tendency to blame men, blame whites, whatever else for things. It's creating a really fertile ground for actual racists, actual misogynists, and so on. The men's movement doesn't seem to be policing itself or choosing the best people to represent it. Philip Davies, for Christ's sake, and what's his name from the Justice for Men and Boys party, he's a crank, right? Every good thing that he says or does is counterbalanced by 3 bad things, right? And increasingly the comments, the people who are interested, the people who sign up, they're these traditionalists, these conservatives, small c, the same kind of reactionary behaviour and ideas and things that I object to in feminism, in modern feminism. So it's becoming the worst version of itself in the way that modern feminism has become the worst version of itself, in the way that modern racial activism has become the worst version of itself. It's just fucking terrible. And I'm really, really disillusioned because that thing, that movement that helped me doesn't seem to be there anymore. And seems to be becoming everything that it used to hate. And this is true of everything that I seem to take an interest in. Everything that I enjoy or love seems to be being corrupted by either one side or the other, by action or reaction. I don't know where I fit anywhere anymore. Alright, I've always acted in a way, or attempted to act in a way, that serves my conscience and my rationality and my belief in right and wrong. To treat people equally and without favour. To be loyal to my friends. To stand for principle, like the principle of free speech and free expression, even when I don't agree with people or what they do with that expression. What's that gotten me, right? What is the point of being principled? What is the point of striving to be what I believe to be a good man when you just get painted as evil? When all you get for it is hate? It's a rhetorical question, of course. For most of us, I think we do the right thing because we believe it to be the right thing. We don't do it for the recognition of others. We don't do it for some sort of payoff. It's for us. It's according to the diktats of our own conscience and so on. There's a couple of sayings I have that I'm actually quite proud of and I think are quite profound. One of them is, a pessimist can only ever have a nice surprise, which I think is true and slightly comedic. And the other one, which I came up with more recently, is that ultimately the only person you have to be able to live with is yourself. So you have to be able to live with your choices, your actions. You have to be able to understand why you did a thing. You have to be okay with it. Or if you're not okay with it, you have to process that and understand why you're not okay with it and come to understand it. So you don't do these things for kudos. You don't act in the way that you do. You don't stand for the principles that you do for the sake of anyone else, unless you're being performatively woke or whatever. I think you can be performatively unwoke as well. It's for you. But at the same time, our culture is replete with stories and fictions and tropes and myths and legends and whatever else that where standing on principle and doing the right thing pays off. You know, it's the right thing to do, and that will be recognized. But the real world isn't like that. You can make principled decisions, you can do the right thing every single time, and certain people will still hate you. And there's just no way around it. But to bring this huge self-indulgent ramble to an end, I am disillusioned with everything. Everything I've cared about or loved or that has been helpful or accepting to me seems like it's gone to shit. One way or the other. Action or reaction. It's all crap. And there is no forgiveness, there is no give in the system, and even the things that I've seen that have been good and wonderful and helpful and genuinely progressive rather than faux progressive, it's all been co-opted by one side or the other. And I mean, politically homeless is this idea, this phrase that goes around. It's not just politically homeless that I feel intellectually homeless, creatively homeless, philosophically homeless, socially homeless. I feel adrift in absolutely everything and disillusioned with everything and suspicious of everything, and I hate feeling like that. I hate being like that, but I have good reason to be. But it's what's happened in the men's rights movement, whatever you want to call it, that I have found particularly disillusioning lately. Because I got so much help there, I got so much support there, I saw that what was said about it was absolute bullshit. But now, every time there's a post or a video or a blog or an article or whatever, it seems full of reactionary, small c conservative, genuinely misogynistic, genuinely nasty, incel type, sex negative people. And that's not the movement that helped me as a man when I was in crisis. And that's horrible. I don't particularly feel like it, but have a zang anyway. Zang.